Welcome to Reconnecting with the Earth for Personal and Global Healing. I'm Oryx Cohen, and I'll be co-moderating, representing the National Coalition for Mental Health Recovery, and say a bit more about that organization in a bit. First, some housekeeping while we wait on some other people joining us. People often ask, is this going to be recorded? Yes, this webinar is being recorded, and the recording and the PowerPoint presentation will be available on our website, ncmhr.org. If you have questions, there is a question function in your dialog box. You can ask questions there at any time, and we will answer them in the order that they are received. You're also welcome to make comments using the chat function, and we may be asking you some questions using the chat function. We want you to be involved today. We're interested in your expertise and where you're from and why you've come today. So please use the question and chat function, and we can have a community here today. So the agenda today, I'm doing some housekeeping, and I'll give you a little background, and myself and Martha will be co-moderating today. We have Reverend Luke A. Shooting Star Walters as one of the presenters, Jody Freeholds London, and Chief Rangi Ahipene, as well as a question and answer session. So we are very excited about today's webinar. I'm personally excited. This is the fruition of a vision after I was truly inspired after visiting New Zealand last year and getting a chance to work on Paris Williams' organic farm and a chance to meet Chief Rangi Ahipene. The earth, human beings, our ecosystem, and everything in it are in a deep crisis right now. This webinar is timely indeed, and I want to extend a special thank you to Indigenous people from around the world who are attending the webinar today or who will watch later. And I want to thank everyone who is attending today. You're here because you care about the earth and everybody in it. And thank you for coming. So a little bit about the National Coalition for Mental Health Recovery. The mission is to come together to have a voice at the state and national levels so that people can live full lives in communities of their choosing. And never has it been more timely to come together. The National Coalition for Mental Health Recovery is a membership organization. You can join as an individual or organization at the website. This year, the National Coalition for Mental Health Recovery is organizing the National Alternatives Conference. Alternatives is the largest peer-run conference in the US and is taking place July 29th through August 3rd in Washington, D.C. There's actually a webinar next week, an informational webinar about the conference, and I'll paste the link in the chat box for you for that webinar. And to register, you can go to alternatives-conference.org and for more information. And I will post that link as well in the chat. So people actually come from all over the world to Alternatives. So like this webinar, it is international. And fittingly, we would like to thank our co-sponsor, the International Association of Peer Supporters, for helping to make this webinar possible, or INAPS as they're called. And now I'd like to turn it over to our co-moderator, Martha Barbone, who will say a few words, and then we'll get started. Martha.
Welcome everyone. So this is Martha. I'm currently the secretary of INAPS, or the International Association of Peer Supporters, and also the conference chair. I'm really excited that we have collaborated with the National Coalition to produce this webinar. A lot of what you'll be hearing is about collaboration, and I think it's so important for all of us right now. And we really look forward to future collaboration. I put our website in the chat box. INAPS mostly is an organization to represent the views and support people who work or volunteer in peer support. We also have a conference coming up, an annual conference this year. It's December 3rd to 5th in Orlando. And you can also get information about that on our website. But I thank you all for coming, and I hope you enjoy it.
Thanks, Martha. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Chief Rangi Ahipeni to give us a blessing to start out.
Kia hiwara, kia hiwara, kia hiwara. Kia hiwara ki tērā tuku, kia hiwara ki tērā tuku. Nau mai haramai. Nau mai haramai te kāranga maha ki tēnei te kaupapa nunui o te ā. Hoi anō ka huri taku mihi nei ki te tino ātu orongora wātu. Nau a mātau I hui mai I tēnei wā. He wā nui tēnei I whakaanga ki te take o te ā, te take o ngā tāngata. Tokua mai te rongoa hei piki ake te hauora o tātou nei. Nō reira, tihei mauri ora. Thank you all. That's my blessing for opening up this segment of the webinar, and I welcome and acknowledge my relatives of the world, and this is a special time that we've come together in a time of much need. But the answer was always there, and so it's about us remembering the medicine that was left by our ancestors, and for us to look at that and to use that to heal the world and ourselves today. So thank you all. Back to you, Oryx.
Thanks, Rangi. And our first presenter is Reverend Luke A. Shooting Star Walters. And just a special thank you to Luke. The inspiration for this, really the spark, was when you sent an email out very much on this topic, and we got a conversation started about a series of webinars on this topic. So welcome, Luke. And I will, I'm switching the presentation over to you at the moment. Change presentation.
Thank you, Oryx.
Yes, we'll switch it right over to you.
Now?
Yep.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. Here we go. The experience. So yes, I'm Luke, a shooting star. And this presentation is to illuminate a path for us with lived experience that is very much needed for us to walk, those of us that are called to this path in these times. As the system is seeking to absorb peers into it, this path is very important to also consider for stewarding or like championing the heart and soul and the earth and our connection to the ecosystem. I would like to also take a moment to address some confusion and consternation, because I do identify as a minister, and that doesn't mean that I'm going to seek to convert people to some sort of a religion, but it is important for us to have representatives and ambassadors for the population to advocate for these views and these issues. And as a minister, it is important to have these champions. And if there is a religion that I seek to gather people into, it is wellness. And the force of this, the essence of this, the presence of this is what is needed in our lives and in the world today. I'm interested as a universalist minister in taking away the human constructed creations, the words, the images, the graven images, the scriptures. What are we left with? What, with a capital W, what is this? Well, I'd say that wellness is a pretty good word for it, even though that's also human creation. Peace as well. Thank you. Join us in the journey. Let's start with what is wellness? A great starting point for the journey of rediscovery, which is similar to recovery, but another angle on it. What is wellness for you? This is a starting point for the journey. How does it appear in your life? What does it smell like, taste like? When do you feel the effect of it more? And when do you feel it less in your life? SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration of the United States, defines wellness as not the absence of disease, illness, or stress, but the presence of purpose in life. Active involvement in satisfying work and play, joyful relationships, a healthy body and environment, and happiness. I insert sustainable happiness because I believe that is important. And my presentation is about purpose, so there's a direct connection with wellness. But let's start with what's wellness for you. That's the important thing, because the journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step. It starts with initiative. Can we just have somebody else do it for us? Can we put wellness in a cookie or a pill and give it to somebody and make it all better? It would be that simple. Can it be pasteurized, cloned, grown in test tubes? Or is it an organic phenomena with a life of its very own, unique for each person? Similar to a living plant, wellness can be grown with healthy supports. It starts with initiative. What activities and ingredients promote wellness in your life or counter-supportive wellness? These are great questions to ask oneself, embarking on the journey. What factors lead up to a descent into despair, crisis, instability, suffering? What purpose do these serve in life? Truly, there's a reason to learn, to grow. What is this? And how can we ever fall away from grace if we have met our needs for existence? Is it possible to sustain this? Homeostasis is defined as a state of sustained balance. So what is crisis? What does it look like? This absence of wellness in life. Oftentimes we see the tip of the iceberg. There's a hint, there's a clue, can allow us to see more. So creating a map is oftentimes helpful for people. If they can recall the stages, the timeline that led into despair and suffering and crisis, oftentimes that helps us to gain insight and develop a recipe for how sustainable wellness can be achieved and maintained. Improve our chances of success. So I have a sample map shown here. It's very helpful insight. And There are many models for maintaining health, and each has their rightful place and value. It's really important to maintain this piece to complement wellness. And peace in the health system is to find the value of all of this. Medicine, education, each very helpful to till the soil for wellness that may return again in our lives, sustained for a season in the symbolic garden of one's world. So it's really important to mention that recovery is a stage. Recovery, getting out of crisis, stability from crisis is a stage. But it all, in my view, leads to back to life. Recovery is not the end goal. We're not going to be dysfunctional all of our lives. The end goal is sustainable wellness. And SAMHSA shares about wellness very well in the 8 dimensions of wellness, recognized as a core center of the wellness model. So back to what is wellness for you, as you can see from how they illuminate it here in this illustration, there's a lot to it. Is it possible for you to have your homeostasis balance through having a lot of social activities, or going to the gym, or going to, your meditations? And how can you increase your understanding and your wellness in life through also seeing to these other needs? It's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs stuff. To champion the ripple effect. Whoa. Once we have our understanding of this wellness and the journey takes us along, we become more influential. And this leads to sustainable wellness support. Viewed in the larger spectrum of the 8 dimensions, I see that it's another way of saying permaculture. Just one drop is all it takes of influence to become very influential in the ripple effect. We are champions. We can be. The journey of rediscovering wellness is raising awareness in our story, whether it be her story or history of influence in the world that leads to wellness or to woe. To champion the ripple effect is to advance an awareness of wellness support. Each person's sphere of influence is a different size, depending on one's own capacity for attention. For someone, it can be a neighborhood, a county, or as quantum physics suggests, for some it may even be their whole planet or a surrounding galaxy. And we can expand our capacity, be they large or small. All of our efforts do matter. To champion the ripple effect is to achieve mastery of sustainable wellness by cultivating great awareness of the influence that spills over beyond one's own life. There's an oil spill of the River Marañón in Peru here, and on the flip side, there's an event function of the City Repair's Tea Horse serving tea and hospitality to people in Portland, Oregon. So expanding our sphere of influence is possible for us as individuals, collectively, together in groups. Mastering sustainable wellness is like finding a light or a supportive wind for our engine, the sails of a ship, a kind of life force. Therefore, to champion the ripple effect is similar to the fictional role of a Jedi. And now we're touching upon that other path that we can walk as peers with lived experience at these times. The very real benefit, though, aside from fiction, is taking up this mantle, a rediscovery of life purpose. The journey of a rediscovery eventually brings us, each person, to a place in life where we want to be of service in a variety of influential ways. I've used the term epicenters because it's the best term for this that I've found. Recovery learning communities are another way of saying it. Community clubhouses, centers. Epicenters works best for me. And the difference between recovery learning communities and wellness epicenters is we do believe that there is a stage beyond recovery, and this is peering beyond into sustainable wellness. Some examples of these paths of service are prevention, engagement, support, collaborative oversight, options for those of us that may choose to walk this path, hear this calling as issuing from the earth. And we'll go into some examples of these. In prevention, influences we come into contact in life can increase the risk that our homeostasis or balanced existence of wellness is disrupted. A fall from grace can be avoided, though, with supportive influences in your life. Some examples of prevention services are peer-run respite houses, new family parent support groups, programs. You can advocate for expand crisis prevention services near you through local advisory councils to government, too. I'd also like to point out that respite is like relaxation and rejuvenation, and it has a direct correlation with the essence of nature, the influence that nature has in our life, taking walks, hikes, camping, gardening, When we're back on the map of existence again, we associate. This is engagement. We want to participate. This is a joy. It's a natural wellspring within us of desire, pursuing engagement with life wherever we find it. And with rediscovered purpose in life often comes renewed relevance. This means that we belong. Examples of engagement activities can include community service events, hospitality services like serving food and beverage, offering clothes to folks that need it, outreach to at-risk persons, refugees, survivors of misfortune, the houseless populations. And there's many more. The support aspect. Wellness support can be for any of the 8 dimensions of wellness. Whatever you're strong at, there's many options for how you can deliver this to the folks that need it in your community. The wellness model is put into action by intentionally weaving together activities between organizations through strategic collaborations. Wraparound services, for example, that more than one organization offer to maximize mutual benefit for local area networks. Examples of support services include day-use drop-in centers, or well springs as we call it in the Wellness Initiative Network, job referrals and in-house job programs to help people get the vocational wellness in their life, residential supports like rural farming in more spacious, beautiful settings outside of the cities, and long-term urban housing. So they connect together. This is a conversation that Oryx and I really connected strongly on that led into this webinar. Collaborative oversight. So this is where we really piece it together. The right hand talks to the left hand. It happens consistently enough. This is what happens in the epicenters, like the leadership, strategy, intentionality of it. Coordination orchestrated through an epicenter to connect the points on the map of a region are weaved together intentionally for collaboration with local allied partnerships. Some key aspects of this influence are regional conferences organized, media productions to raise awareness, presence on government advisory councils, quality standards, policy, and licensing advisory, forming coalitions and associations of organizations. This last one often involves a charter, but doesn't always need to. But agreements on paper, intentionality, and dedication to the cause, very important. We do have a charter that we can offer, and I also encourage other organizations and coalitions to bring it to this level together. And this is what we're leading up to: uniting wellness support with permaculture, dedication to a cause, and ability to make a difference in the communities comes from being aware of the influence of the 8 dimensions of wellness in our own life, and it spills beyond. Wellness support, along with understanding of permaculture practices, could ripple out to slow or even reverse climate change. Examples of such activity combinations include respite houses that were built with reclaimed wood from other older houses and plant pots crafted from reused yogurt tubs or coffee containers. They make great plant pots. Social enterprises reusing composted food waste. So much you can do with it, and it's profitable. Puppet showings made from repurposed clothing. Oh yeah, can think of some great pieces, some fun puppets. So uniting wellness support with permaculture. There's some examples of some organizations I've seen, and I invite you to send some other great examples so that we can populate a list and facilitate the connections. City Repair Project here in Portland, based in Portland, but traveling around the world to meet the interest around the globe for permaculture and building villages and collaborations of great activities. Earth Guardians International, also founded by Indigenous youth, and Food by Design, local here to Portland, but really, really great mission as well, providing garden grown foods to people that need it, and involving people in recovery to learn purpose, restore purpose. The reward of value that comes from the journey of rediscovery is insight into the nature of this, what is crisis on the personal level, and what is wellness on the personal level, and it leads, when it spills beyond, to the larger. The inherent potential is to bring forth the value of successful recovery on the grandest of scales, to revitalize our society in the 8 dimensions of our world. A tall order, yes, and this may be the next step in our collective species' journey as human, well, beings. We'll see. May you find a way to deliver that reward. And I have a dream. I want to share this dream with you. Welcome. That those of us who have suffered through the worst life has to offer and live to tell the tale will find strength within and self-respect, and that we have overcome the most impassable of paths. We, she, and he have survived through journey of darkest night and deep underworld. We could be heroes in the here and now, at a time of the greatest need, to share a light of hope and offer healing in this state of crisis on the grandest of planetary scales. May you find a place of respect in the world. The fires of life have forged wisdom and resiliency in you. You have been tested by the greatest of forces and are found worthy. You are wanted. Let the value in you, recovered from the journey, guide others to a way of grace. May our community of all peoples accept us for our place as the experts we are, to lead in the healing of the greater body that we exist within. May our journey serve to revitalize and restore balance to our ecosystem so we will know peace on earth. This is the flag of the society I've established, and we are growing. To speak of this this life beyond, there is still purpose. There is a new life available, awaiting. To learn more about this, initiating Ripples of Wellness campaign, I invite you to connect with us, become allies, look into upcoming trainings, events offered, or invite us to an event. Thank you. It is time to evolve from identity as many isolated individuals, some in groups, coalitions, organizations, communities, and even entire movements, to become a society of peers. Thank you. And blessed be. Back to Yorks.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Luke. That was really powerful. I'd like to introduce our next speaker, who is Jody Freeholtz London, who is the Director of Wellness in the Woods. And I will unmute you, Jody. All right, Jody.
Thank you, Oryx, and good afternoon, wherever you are. It's great to be here from the lovely area of central Minnesota by a small town called Nimrod, just the way it sounds, where there are about 69 people, except for during Nimrod days where there's about 3,000 people who come to ride bulls and play ball and party. Anyway, actually being part of Wellness in the Woods, which is the nonprofit that I started in 2013, the whole name Wellness in the Woods was really imperative to my being. I chose this name as actually part of a dream after working in the mental health field as a provider for a number of years, and then going through my own lived experience and now living in recovery and working for an organization that was the voice of individuals who have a lived experience in Minnesota. And then that position was lost funding, and so I needed to kind of decide what to do with my world. And the goal was to really represent mostly non-metro areas, because we have a very much a lack of services and a lack of being able to stay connected. Next slide. So a long time ago, this is a picture of my family. I'm the person with those lovely cat's eye glasses in the back. And I was the oldest of 5 children. My parents were dairy farmers, and the earth was our livelihood. We absolutely knew and expected that was going to be how we stayed alive. And mom and dad were very instrumental in my growing up. We knew that we had to work hard and that we had to respect the earth as part of who we were and what we wanted to accomplish in our life. And so the earth was a real huge part of what we wanted to be and do. We were also a very close, connected family. We worked hard together and we played hard together. Next slide. So this is my mom and dad now. My mom was always very much a huge gardener. We ate a lot of what we grew up on that was grown in our garden, an organic garden. And my mom and dad were both dairy farmers, so we ate what we produced very much. The beef and all of the garden materials, and we ate very, very few processed foods. My dad was also very involved in social justice, especially around farming in central Minnesota. And so as a young child, there was a protest about the price of milk at that point in time. And so my dad guided me into the process of becoming a social justice protester at about the age of 5. Next slide. So I really grew up with an appreciation for the land. I didn't appreciate it as much at the age of 16 as I do now at the age of almost 60. My dad was an organic farmer at that point in time, and I didn't think that he actually knew exactly what he was doing. I found out that the older that I get, the wiser that he is. But it was very important to us, and the formal and informal kind of way that we were brought up was very much about caring to the soil, taking care of the animals in return for what they gave us. We almost always had, besides the dairy cattle that we raised and milked, there were always some chickens and usually some hogs around. And so it was really important to us that we utilize that for our own well-being, and we ate very well. We ate pretty much Midwest expectation kind of food with every evening after chores were done, there was meat and potatoes and vegetables, and my mom was a great baker, so there was some usually homemade bread along with it. My dad also believed that it was important that we not use poisons to increase our profit on the farm. He was always really open. Both of my parents were also very open about having honest relationships with people, and we were taught that ethical and honest relationships with individuals is very, very, very important. And so I know very well that my dad worked very hard, that even though it may have impacted our bottom profit line, that he was going to produce an ethical relationship with individuals. We also worked a lot with our neighbors. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen so much anymore, even in agriculture. We have become very much more independent and not able to work with each other. As I was a child growing up, we would work together with organizations and other advocates for better prices. We would work together to accomplish what needed to be done on the farm. And then on the weekend, on Friday evenings, when all the cows were milked, we'd get together and our parents would play cards of some kind, and we'd all have egg salad sandwiches, and the kids would go outside and play hope to see the ghost tonight or whatever it was we were doing. But as a 5-year-old, when my dad was, both my parents were involved in protesting the low price of milk, I was there with my great little purple furry coat, and my dad put a sign in the front of me, and he pushed me out in front of the TV cameras and said, okay, now you're going to share with the world what we think is important here. And so that was kind of my introduction to social justice. And I have no idea what that sign said. I do know that it gave me the courage to actually go out in front of people and talk about what I thought was well and good for our society as a whole. Next slide. So since I was able to walk, I have spent a lot of time gardening. Up here in Nimrod, we have a greenhouse and a number of raised gardens. All of our gardens are raised organically, and we also have horses, so we have some pretty righteous dirt. It's a mixture of sand and other mulched materials, including horse manure, and we can grow some pretty nice stuff. We had actually had a greenhouse that we put up just a couple years ago, and our tomatoes last year ended up being tomato trees rather than tomato plants. So that was fun. We were also able to have tomatoes well into the fall. We usually get our first killing frost about the middle of September. So having my hands in the dirt and being part of that is a really important part of my life and my being well and my recovery. As a matter of fact, after my divorce in 2007, my choice was to go back into a place in the country that I could live, and I would, and it was really important for me to be in that healing process. Next slide. So we knew that working with the land always required a lot of hard work, and that meant that our hands were usually dirty, that my mother would bring food out to us during some of that hard work, which included baling hay, and it also included picking rocks and milking cows and all of those things that are just connected with the land. Next slide. We worked really closely with our animals as well as dairy farmers. We knew that if we didn't take care of our animals, they weren't going to provide what we needed from them, and in this case, milk. We raised organic milk as well, and so not only did we sell the milk that our cattle produced, but we ate a lot of ice cream, and we utilized the milk that we produced to feed our family. Next slide. So here's some of the hard work. We didn't actually break rocks in the hot sun, but we did pick a lot of rocks off of the field so that we could take our machinery over the fields without breaking it. And my brothers and sisters and I spent a lot of time out in the field in the spring picking those rocks so that my dad could go out and plant corn and small grain and alfalfa for our cattle. Next slide. It also meant that we were taught self-advocacy and responsibility as very young children. There were jobs that we were responsible for, and there was always some repercussion if we didn't get them done. But there was also a number of ways that my parents incentivized us getting those done. On the weekends, we might go fishing, or we might be able to take some time and just have some fun things. So for my mom and dad, it was really important that we also were given the benefits of some type of financial pay, but also very early, as early as we possibly could. All of my siblings and I got jobs off the farm to help supplement what it was that we needed for our family and for ourselves, because the earth did not offer us a lot of wealth. The wealth that it really offered us in being able to work together as a family, to be able to smell the fresh cut alfalfa, to be able to spend time outside, and to work with our family members and our neighbors. Next slide. So we also played really hard. For those of you who aren't familiar with ice fishing, during the winter in Minnesota, the lakes all freeze over. And so when we aren't busy putting in crops, we can go out and sit in the middle of the lake and drill a hole through the ice and have fresh fish all year long. Next step. So Minnesota has a lot of lakes, and we participated in utilizing those lakes. We have many, many lakes, 10,000 lakes plus. And so that was part of the time that we had off in between planting and harvesting crops. We would spend that time enjoying that. That also included many of the rivers that are within Minnesota. So canoeing and tubing and enjoying the wildlife around them. We didn't have a lot of money growing up on the farm, so we didn't do things that cost a lot of money, but we did use a lot of nature to really be part of our healing. And that's still a really important part of my life. The house where I live right now is about a half mile from one of the most popular canoeing and tubing rivers, and we live probably 10 miles from the closest lake. We're actually in the process of making a move about 30 miles from where we live now, and one of the really important pieces for us in finding a new home to live to was that it would not be in a city, and we were able to find 10 acres on the edge of a small town where we could still have a garden. We're hoping that there's a piece of land that's attached to it that we want to offer as a community garden to the small community of Eagle Bend. Next slide. So for my dad, it was really an important part of his life, and for all of my siblings was hunting. And usually the hunting that we did were either small game of some kind or deer hunting, because the white-tailed deer is very, very prevalent in central Minnesota. And my dad was very clear that when we hunted small game, and when we went fishing, we would use those animals to feed our family. There was never any kind of waste in our family. And so for us, it wasn't only the game that we got, but spending that time in nature, being able to just enjoy what our higher power had given us, and be that the fall leaves, which are beautiful in Minnesota, as well as just interacting with nature itself and the animals that we may not even be looking for as game. Next slide. So we know that in Minnesota, as in a lot of states and a lot of countries, that water is really, really important. I actually happened to marry a man who spent a good part of his life surfing. Now, there's no surfing in Minnesota, but we do live close to lakes and rivers and spend a lot of time on them. The great part about being involved with the water is also all of the wildlife that's involved. And my children also enjoy that. One of my oldest son has 7 children. And one of the things they like to do on their birthday is go on a canoe ride with their dad and come back and report that they've seen beavers and deer and sometimes even a bear. And so my children are also very connected with nature, and that I'm really happy about that. It means that they're not spending a lot of time watching TV or playing video games, but they're outside playing, which we know is really healthy and important in their development. Next slide. We also knew that when we created Wellness in the Woods in 2013, that it was important for us to be responsible for our environmental surroundings. So one of the first things we did was set up the opportunity to clean a 2-mile stretch of highway. And my children and the people that I work with are also very cautious about keeping our environmental clean. That includes not only our office, but our park spaces and any place that we use any kind of resources. So it's not ours just to use, but it's also ours to take care of and to give back. Next slide. So when I grew up, at the ripe old age of 18, I married a farmer, and we raised organic hogs down the road. Again, farming was a really important part of my life and a really important part of our children growing up. They had to be responsible for their own chores. They were paid for the work they did, and we very much always had a garden and ate off of most of the things that we produced and very little processed food. Next slide. So this is my family shortly after my first marriage, and we lived on a farm near a very small town, and that was when we were just starting to celebrate our new family. Next slide. So for me, it is really important that I spend time as much as I possibly can outside of writing grants and doing the business work, that I take time on the weekend, and we invite others to also enjoy the 40 acres that we live on, to come and ride our horses, to ride in a buggy, and we almost always have more produce than we could possibly use. So we share that with our friends and our neighbors and other people who are in our faith community and with family members. One of the things I think that I really enjoy the most is being able to get that very first ripe tomato. I usually have to wait a little longer than I'd like to, but something about growing it myself and being able to share it with other people is really important in my health and wellness. Next slide. So in 2005, some really big changes happened in my life. I went from the person providing mental health services to struggling with my own mental health challenges. And that was a real perception change for me. And I had to really think about, what was this gift that was being given me? It didn't seem like a gift at the time, but in reality, it was. Next slide. So I went through a divorce. I was really in this place of spiritual void and feeling betrayed by my faith community. I went through a job loss. I had experienced a lot of psychological abuse, which led to anxiety and fear. And I had to find and reach out to some possible new ways that I could really bring myself back to the place that I wanted to be in wellness and recovery. Next slide. That included staying for a number of days and evenings in a cabin that looks just like this, with no cell phone and no contact with any other human beings. It was kind of, for me, reconnecting with my real self, because there had been a real spiritual and real loss of balance in my life, and I had to reconnect and find out who I was. It was me trying to be somebody for somebody else, and this was allowing me to reconnect with who I really was and had lost during the previous 50 years. Next slide. So I know that during that time of healing and rebirth for myself, that I had to find some solitude, a place to think. I needed to hear the wind. So not only experiencing, smelling what nature had to provide and seeing it, but I had to hear it. I had to be a place where there were no people, where there was no judgment about what I'd done right or wrong, a place where I could cry if I needed to, a place where I could pray, and a place where I could heal. Next slide. So I ended up buying 40 acres by Nimrod, Minnesota. I called it Sandy Creek because most of the land is very much sandy, and there's a nice little creek that runs through it. And I remember my realtor telling me that this wasn't really a place for a single woman to be, because I had to burn wood and I had to make some fence, and there weren't very many people who lived up here, but it was exactly what I was looking for. And as you can see by this picture, it's surrounded by pine trees. There's a wonderful river just down the road, and there's a place, we actually have 4 horses, and so there was places for me to ride my horses, to share them with my children and grandchildren, and there's only about 1 car a day that goes by, and that's the mailman. So it was really that peaceful, loving place that I needed to be to re-find who I was. Next slide. So this was my space to heal. I was remarried to my loving Tom up in the left-hand corner in 2010, and he enjoys the solitude also. There's, between the two of us, we have 29 grandchildren who also enjoy that solitude and joy that we get from our community and our space of 40 acres. You can see some pictures here of grandkids and kind of what our yard looks like. Down in the bottom left corner are 2 of my grandchildren. We took them down to the river, and they had captured a little baby snapping turtle, and luckily nobody's fingers got bit, and before they put him back in the river, they were enjoying that quite a bit. And my grandkids also, you'll note, really love the time with the horses and spending time. All of them live in small towns, so they really enjoy the fact that they can get out of the small towns and spend time out in nature with Grandpa and Grandma. Next slide, please. So in 2013, I had that another job loss due to this mismanagement. I was really feeling worthless and hopeless. And I found that calm of nature was once again bringing me back into a place where I could think and reprocess. I used not only the gardening, but the solitude. I used time with my horses and with my dogs to kind of bring me back to that place of some natural healing and calm. And I created my own vision through a nonprofit advocacy organization, which we named Wellness in the Woods. Next slide. So a year ago today, I was fortunate enough that someone had nominated me to be the Rural Health Hero for Minnesota, and I was chosen for that honor. It was really exciting because the first time in 20 years, someone who had identified as having a lived mental health experience was chosen, and someone who was not a hospital administrator or the CEO of a huge company. I was just the founder of a nonprofit that was really serving individuals with a focus on rural and greater Minnesota, and it was a huge honor. And there were folks who attended who said they were really hoping that I would wear one of my hippie outfits. So I guess this met the need. That wasn't exactly my plan. I just liked color because that's also part of my recovery and wellness tools. Next slide. So our 501c3 received a SAMHSA Consumer Network grant. We run 2 warm lines that are all peer run. All of our staff and board have a lived mental health experience. We provide statewide mental health education. We're hoping to have the very first peer respite in Minnesota. We're very transparent. I've worked with a number of agencies because of mismanagement that have fallen apart. We utilize the 8 dimensions of wellness as a foundation. We're very much person-centered and supportive of empowerment, personal responsibility, and self-advocacy. Next slide. So I just wanted to bring that.
Comes to the end.
Do I have to about 2 minutes yet, Oryx?
Yeah, can you make it a minute? Just so
I
we
can
get
make
to
it
our
a
next.
minute. Yep.
Okay.
I just
Great.
wanted to bring together that last week we were able to really kind of bring to close a relationship with a beloved pet, and part of that process of grieving was to bring him home and be able to bury him in our land here and surround him and cover him with pine boughs. And just one more way, even through the grieving process, we were using the land. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Jody. When you told me that story, I was very happy to hear that you did that, being a pet owner myself. So before Chief Rangiahi Penny presents, just want to remind folks you can ask questions using the question function, and we're getting some really good questions and comments. There's people tuning in from Argentina, from all over the world. So thank you for coming on a Friday. One of the questions that people had, Rangi, was what is your tribal affiliation? So I'm pretty sure you're going to address that in your presentation. But that was one question that came in. So I'd like to turn it over to you, Rangi.
Greetings, everybody. Kia ora. It's actually good morning here on Saturday, the 9th of June, here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And so, for a lot of you, this is a voice from the future. So, my name is Rangi Ahipene, and I descend from many chiefly lines of the Maori people of New Zealand. The Maori people are related to the Hawaiian people. We have a similar culture and language. So if you need a reference point and you don't know who the Maori people are, we're very similar to the Hawaiian people. Indeed, all the people of Polynesia, we are more or less one race of people. Actually, Maori translates to natural. In my understanding of a lot of indigenous peoples around the world, their names for themselves simply mean natural. I spent some time with the Haudenosaunee people in southern Ontario, and their name for our natural people is Angahoe. So yes, Maori, we are Maori, we're natural people. But what I say to people is that, are we not all natural people? So this is one of the messages to everybody is we are all Maori. My tribal affiliations, I have many tribal affiliations, but my main tribal affiliations is to Ngāti Tuwharetoa. That is the tribe around the area of Lake Taupo in the North Island of New Zealand. Also, Ngāti Kahungunu, which is on the east side of the North Island of New Zealand, as well as many other tribal affiliations. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you, Oryx, you being the key person in making this webinar come to be. I'd like to also acknowledge my fellow panelists, Luke, Jody. Thank you for your messages, and I'm sure that there are people listening that will find and resonate with your message. So a special acknowledgement to the Indigenous peoples who are listening right now. I acknowledge you. I'd also like to add to that we are all indigenous to the earth. So greetings to all. Kia ora. Okay, next slide, please. In anything of significance with Maori, when we stand and we speak on our formal courtyards, or when we invoke the primal ancestral energies, we always refer back to the creation. And so the creator, our name for the creator is Io Mātua Te Kore. It is Io, the parentless one, because there was no one before Io. There was just Io. And from Io, we have the creation and we have the world and we have us. In Māoridom, there are three parts to creation and existence. The first is Te Kore. Te Kore is the nothing, the nothingness. Then we have Te Pō. Te Pō is the night, the dark. The third is Te Ao, or Te Ao Marama. Te Ao Marama is the light. So the three, the nothing, the dark, and the light. Now, when you reflect on that, that is the very process of creation itself. When you create something in your mind, you start off with a blank slate. There's nothing. And from the nothing, the dark comes something, the beginnings of thought, the turnover of thought, the manifestation of thought. And from that thought, we create into the world of reality the manifestation of our thought. So that is the Māori creation in essence. Now, I'm going to tell you the story. Now, from the night came Rangi Nui and Papa Tuanuku. Next slide, please. Rangi Nui is the Sky Father. Papa Tuanuku is the Earth Mother. They were in embrace where the sky and the earth were one. From the Heavenly Father and our earthly mother begat many children. There are 7 main children, but there were believed to be 70 children from that union in total. Next slide, please. The children lived between their mother and their father, but as you can imagine, it was very, very cramped. It was dark. There was no room. And so the children of the Sky Father and the Earth Mother became restless. And they started to talk amongst themselves. And they said, well, we need more space for ourselves. It's dark, it's cramped. We need to separate our parents. And so what happened is, amongst the children, they created two sides. Those of the children that wanted to separate their parents, and those of the children that wanted their parents to remain united. Now, on the side of the children that wanted to separate their parents, many of the more prominent children tried to separate the parents but failed. And there was one particular child, and his name was called Tane. Now, Tane, instead of pushing with his hands up or his shoulders up and his legs down, he got onto his back. So his back was against his mother, and he got his legs up and towards his father, and he pushed like a leg press. And he pushed and he pushed, and slowly but surely, the parents began to separate. And then light came into the world. And that was the moment of light. We say, ki te whai au, ki te ao marama. And light came into the world. So that brings us into the third part of the creation, from the nothing, from the night, into the light. Next slide, please. And then Tane, to ensure that the separation and the new order in the world was permanent, took posts, and he put those posts between his mother and his father, the sky father and the earth mother, to keep them separated. And so those are the posts. Next slide, please. However, like I said before, there were two sides. There were those that were for the separation, and there were those that were against the separation. And so they came to conflict. And there was a great battle between the godly children of the sky and the earth. And that dynamic exists today. And according to Māori legend, it was the Creator himself that brought order into the world and then took the various children and gave them their roles. And those roles created order. So one of the children was Tāwhiri Mātia, and Tāwhiri Mātia was the god of the winds. So he went to live with his father in the sky. And when we have storms, hurricanes, storms, tornadoes, floods, that is, we say, the Māori people say, that is Tāwhiri Mātia, who is renewing the conflict with his brother, or his brothers. His brother Tane, who became the god of the forest. His brother Tongaroa became god of the sea. And so everything has their place in their order, and there is a dynamics between the relationships of those children. Next slide, please. The three baskets of knowledge. After order was established from the creation, Tane decided to climb the heavens. In the Māoridom, we have 10 heavens. And in the top heaven, we have Eo, the creator. And Tane, long story short, went through the journey through the 10 heavens, and he came to the utmost heaven, and there he found the three baskets of knowledge. Te kete tuatia, te kete tuauri, te kete aronui. Te kete tuatia is the basket with all the not so nice things, all the bad things, all the bad knowledge. Te kete Tuauri is the basket of the higher knowledge, the rituals, the prayers, the history, those things that pertain to the gods. Te Kete Aronui is more of a practical basket of knowledge. It has the practical material knowledge of the history of the tribe, the history of making houses, and the earthly domestic material things that are important for existence. Those are the three baskets of knowledge. And they were brought down to earth to be given as a gift to the people of the earth, to give them the knowledge for a balanced way and healthy way of living. So, why have I talked about the creation story of the Maori people? And in doing so, I also acknowledge the creation story of all Indigenous peoples. And some Indigenous peoples may find some similarities in the story that I've just recounted. But the reason why is that we need to recall the stories that were handed down to us by our ancestors. We need to remember the Maori people. We believe that when we recall the stories, we talk about the creation, we bring it and we manifest it into the now, and that the primal energy from that time, from that story, links with our now. And so it's a way of tapping into a most powerful energy that can help us with our journey before us in this time. So that's why, and I mean, the world is, and indeed individuals in the world are facing probably the biggest crisis that the history of the world has ever created, or the history of people have ever experienced. And so, for us Indigenous people, what is happening is not new to us. What is happening is the manifestation of the stories that were given to us by our ancestors. Our ancestors foretold that this time was coming, and that this time was a very important time because it was where mankind had to make a choice, to find healing and to return to the knowledge of the ancestors, where the medicine is kept for the individual and for the world. The alternative for not doing that was destruction of everybody. And all of us can see that if we don't collectively evolve and move beyond this crisis, and then it's pretty grim. But I have hope, and I have belief and faith in mankind, and I believe that the spirit is bigger than anything else negative that is trying to manifest itself and control this world. And I have hope for the future. But like I said, the medicine and the answer lies in the knowledge and the stories that are left by the ancestors. And it's for us to remember that. And I've got to say that all people in this world, yes, we are all Indigenous, and that unfortunately for some races in the world, their Indigenous stories may have been lost or may have been left somewhere in the past. However, we all share the same message right across the board. So let's adapt. Let's look at what messages are left by the native peoples of the world. So everything Everything is related. Everything has its role in the whole. And if we upset the role of one thing in the whole, then we upset the whole. And so just want to leave this with you that in Māoridom, we are all related. We call it whakapapa, which means our family connection. We have a family connection to each other, human beings, to the animals, to the plants, to the mountains, to the seas, to the very rocks, to the stars, and beyond. And so we need to treat the world and each other and everything in it as though they're a dear relative, because that's the reality. That is the message that's been left by our ancestors. So I think that brings me to a close for my message for this time. And I'll give it back to you, Oryx, and we'll open up to questions.
Thank you, Rongi. Such an important message, and thank you for all of you who are still here to hear this important message. So now it's time for questions, and I'm going to go through the questions that we've received so far, and maybe some comments. And so if the panelists could turn on your microphones, I think I'll turn Luke's microphone back on. And let's get to some questions and comments. Well, as I mentioned, that we have someone from Argentina present. Welcome. We have a comment. This is very inspirational for me to hear your message and vision on healing and wellness. Maybe Oregon State Hospital will be able to accommodate such connection to our own nature to heal ourselves in partnership with Mother Earth and Father Sky. And then he says to Luke, miss you, let's get together. We have a question from and a comment from Jasek. Hi, Jasek. He says, I'm an old hippie and I lived on a commune. I did then and continue to live by the back to earth values. Are you all trying to revive that wonderful point in time? That's his question.
May I respond to that, Oryx?
Sure.
I am a firm believer that the pendulum swings back and forth, and I like to believe that I am part of a movement to bring us to a space where we're reclaiming the strength, the beauty, the inspiration of those times that you're referring to, Jacek, merged and joined with the experience and the maturity that we've gained in the era between then and now, so that we can come back to the worth of that with much more potency and effect and impact. So a lot of the content of my message was seeking to accomplish this. So I acknowledge you and I appreciate you, and I view you as an ally in this. We are many leaders united in this. Let's do this. Thank you.
Thanks. So Terry says, can relate to nature. I'm going to the Gunflint Trail in Minnesota to the Boundary Waters Expo as well as Shrimp Boil this weekend at the top of the Gunflint Trail. Nice. I hope this does inspire people to reconnect with the earth. I know today I spent some time in my garden. It was pretty awesome. Oh, and she says if you're not aware, the BWCA boundary waters canoe areas threatened by potential sulfide ore mining on the edge of the boundary waters. There are two different companies trying to mine up there. We need to organize.
Oryx, I'd just like
Yeah.
to make a comment at this stage, and
Yes.
I think if we started to take on the idea that the natural environment are our relatives, are our family, then I think that'll galvanize us more in the protection of the environment. Because if you think about it, we wouldn't allow one of our own family to be abused like that. We would definitely rally around them and do whatever we possibly could to ensure the safety and the well-being of that person. So we need to do that for our waters, our lands, and our skies. And it's about remembering that everything and everyone is connected and related. And if there is a injury to any part of that affects all of us. Thank you.
Very well said. So we have another comment from Megan. Hi, I'm watching from Sonora, California, rural town in Sierra Nevada foothills. Work in the county mental health wellness and recovery center, quote unquote. Growing pains. Grateful to be experiencing this webinar. Thank you. The shout outs help galvanize us. And then we have a question. Is there classes for COB homes? I'm not sure what COB refers to. Do any of the panelists know?
I believe that it's a reference to a, a practice of natural building technique called cob,
Cob
and
homes. Yeah,
yeah,
cob.
it's a
Okay.
earthen material that one person recently told me that when there was a massive fire that came through an area, the modern techniques of the mainstream methods were burned away, but the cob structures remained. So that was good to know. It's like spending time in a little cave or like a burrow, you know, because there's so much earthy material around you. It's really beautiful.
Question.
Yeah.
Oh, someone else want to speak?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick comment on the what's happening in Hawaii and with the volcanic eruptions there. And the Hawaiian people, the god of the volcanoes for them is Pele Honua. And in Maori, our name is Parawhenua. And what you find is that you're starting to see that the earth is starting to push back. You're starting to see these out massive volcanic eruptions. You're starting to see superstorms. You know, so what I'm saying is that the children of the sky and the earth are becoming angry at us, and they are starting to. I mean, enough's enough, and starting to push back. And we need to be. The more we ignore what we've been doing on the earth, the greater the voice of the children of the earth and the sky will become. So it's just a point I wanted to make that maybe it's the children of the earth and the sky viewing their unhappiness at what's going on. Things are.
Thanks, Rangi. And a question for you, Rangi, from Janelle. What is the creator's name who borned himself?
Io. So that's spelled I-O. Io.
Thank you. And Will has a question for Jody. in regards to planned respite in Minnesota, do you have any particular wellness activities planned for using a connection to Earth to promote healing?
As a matter of fact, we certainly do. We will have a garden available, keeping in mind that half of our, well, okay, 3/4 of our year are usually snow covered, but we plan to have some internal gardens or at least plants within. And the focus will be on pure respite, certainly is what our guests want and need for their recovery process.
Okay, thank you. We have a question for Rangi from Gabriel. In Maori tradition, how do people connect with Io? And can you say more about your understanding of the world medicine?
That's a good question, Gabriel. Traditionally, Eo was so sacred that his name traditionally was not even mentioned, and we said another name. But also, there was only a few people that actually were privy to the knowledge of Eel, and they were people with skills that were able to hold on to that powerful knowledge. And so, only a few. However, the majority of the population were conversant with Rangi and Papa and the children of Rangi and Papa. And what was the other part of the question, Oryx?
The other part of the question was, can you say more about your understanding of the world medicine?
Yes, well, I think I just want to make a comment on. I think one of the prevailing messages that flows right through all the speakers today, is that it's the reconnection to the natural world, where we will find a lot of healing for ourselves and for the world itself, and appreciation thereof. And I just want to give an example. In my day job, I work with at-risk Indigenous youth, and my biggest allies in bringing about wellness of these young people is the forest, the sea, and the land. And just by being a facilitator in the connection and interaction between the young person and those elements brings around healing and guidance to that young person. So what I'm saying, Gabriel, is just connecting. Connect back with the natural world. Connect back with the wisdom of our ancestors. The medicine is the earth itself. The medicine is the knowledge of our ancestors. It is for us really to reconnect with that and to live by that. And that's the answer. Thank you.
Wow. So this is a really great conversation. So we talked before we started that this might happen. So we will go a few minutes over, most likely, to continue the conversation. So you're welcome to stay with us. Patricia asks, will you speak to the United Nations as to the content of this webinar? And I think that is a fabulous idea. This really has big potential, and you're thinking big like we are, so we appreciate that.
Can I address that a moment,
Yeah.
Orix? One of the founders of Earth Guardians, which I mentioned in my presentation, did speak before the United Nations and really got their attention. It really helped to bring Earth Guardians to the international stage. And I believe it's really important for us to keep following up with them, to keep this in their attention of the importance. The courage that youth had to come to them and say, look, we're inheriting the world. What are you doing to help us preserve it? Do we have to take matters into our own hands and do your jobs for you? Come on, please. So I really think that's a great message, and maybe we'll start planning that. We'll be in Washington, D.C. pretty soon for the National
Right.
Alternatives Conference, huh?
Yeah, and we are planning a future webinar. So we would definitely want to consider having Earth Guardians a part of that. And let's widen the scope of who this goes out to. So thank you for that comment. The next question is from Andrea, and it's a big one. What is the largest conflict you see amongst the people of the earth today?
I would like to address that. This is Luke. I believe that the largest conflict between the peoples and the land is the need to make money to survive, to feed our families, to support our lifestyle. And oftentimes those employment opportunities come with obligations to the company that are counter-supportive to our way of life. And it's a great temptation, but it takes integrity and dedication to living a sustainable life to navigate that. And we need to advocate for more opportunities in triple bottom line companies and such that can disperse this conflict of interest. Great question.
I would like to make a follow up and make a comment on that too. So my answer to that, Andrea, would be disconnection. Disconnection is probably the single most factor, and that if we're disconnected from others, from the interests of others, from the earth, from the interests of the earth, then, with disconnection brings ignorance. And from ignorance and separation and disconnection brings fear. And fear breeds injury, negative injury to others and the environment. So we need to stop being disconnected. Again, it goes back to reconnect to the natural world, reconnect to humanity, reconnect to the wisdom of our ancestors. The answer is not new. The answer is as old as time itself. We just have to connect with that again. So disconnection. Thank you.
Okay, let's keep this great conversation going. We have Monique piping in from Holland, the Netherlands. Welcome, Monique, and she says, I can connect to this notion that we're all family, also with the mountains and the earth. For me, that sense of connection is being affirmed by science, but in ordinary life, it's difficult to be heard when speaking of humans as animals. How can I ever make my fellow people in northwestern Europe to feel their ties with the land and the mountains or the sea?
That's a really good question, Monique. Well, the message I would advise you to talk to your fellow people would be this, is that we are spirit first, and spirit is in everything. Spirit is what connects us. Our physical form gives us distinction from us as animals or humans or the mountains, but our spirit is the same. So when we injure the spirit of land or the air or water or the spirit of other people, we injure ourselves. So that's my message, Monique. Thank you.
And I would also like to offer something of worth too. Thank you so much for asking this question. I want to bring to your attention the book by David Wilcox, The Source Field Investigations. The source field represents like the pool of wellness for me. And in his book, he did mention that there was a study, an experiment that a man named Baxter performed in the 30s, I believe it was, where he was able to register the responses from a plant to various stimuli in the environment, and the bio feedback pulses from the plant registered great alarm when just presented with a pair of scissors and fire and such. And when Baxter tried to share this information of the very real evidence that plants are sentient, the greater community of science just stifled the results. Because if you can glimpse for a moment the impact that such an awareness, such a realization would have on all levels of our industry and society, that everything around us is sentient also, it would change so much about industry and our economy. It had to be snuffed. So
Yeah, and I want to add to that because we have a similar question about how can you do this when you live in a city with no access to land and water. And it's definitely challenging in our industrial society, but I think it starts with you. It starts with me. It starts with people waking up to the fact that we are connected human beings, that we're connected to the earth, we're connected to each other, we're connected to even these brick buildings, even the pavement, the sidewalks. And if we start waking up and we start better connecting with each other, then other people will follow. Um, so it's in everybody's nature to want to do this, to want to connect, to want to feel love and a sense of community. Um, so it starts with us, is my response. Um, One last question. I know we ran late, and thank you for all the great questions. We pretty much got to all of these. Um, do you feel closer to God when you are in the woods? I feel empty when I am away from the earth too long. For the chief.
Hmm. Yeah. Uh, it's definitely more of a vivid experience when you're in the forest, or when you're in on the ocean, or when you are working with the land. It's definitely much a vivid experience, and it's you feel allowed a message, allowed a connection. But I'd just like to add to that no matter where I am in the world, whether I'm in a city or uh, wherever, I still feel a connection to God, to the Creator, and to nature itself, no matter where I go. It's just that when I'm in the forest, the message and the connection is just more audible, more louder. But I just want to say there's a valid question about how do I connect to the earth and nature when I'm living in the city. Well, my answer to that is you're standing on the earth, you're connected, your feet are touching your mother, the Mother Earth, and so acknowledge her, Mother Earth. I acknowledge you, and your head is touching the sky. And so I say, acknowledge the Sky Father. Sky Father, I acknowledge you. So no matter where you are connected with the primal parents. Thank you.
Mm, thank you. And with that, thank you for staying a bit late. Um, with that, Rangi is going to lead us in some closing comments and blessing. And thank you for attending the webinar.
Thank you, Oryx, and thank you to my fellow panelists. Thank you to the audience. We are honored and privileged. We are just a few voices amongst many, and we're honored to have your ears and your time today. And we can see this wonderful image in front of us. And what we have here is we have a couple of Maori women and very beautiful, very strong image with the nature. And I think the message is here: we cannot separate mankind from the natural world. And when we try to do so, when we disrespect Mother Nature, we disrespect ourselves, and that's the place we find ourselves today. And so I'm going to give a prayer, a blessing in Māori language, and then I'll just briefly translate it into English, and then that'll be us. E te tino atu urungara wātu, ka nui te mihi atu ki a koe, tino whakawhetai atu ki a koe nau a mātou nei e tahi ngā tangata o te ao i hui hui i tēnei wā, kia whakarongo ki te kārere nunui, te kārere whakaora, te āhuatanga kino ki te ao, kei ngā tangata o te ao, kei te ao nui. Nō reira, ko te rongo wā, kei ngā kōrero o ngā mātua tupuna. Tohungia mai ki a mātou, ki a anga atu, ki a aua kōrero, ki a piki ake te āhuatanga hauora o ngā tāngata me te ao. He mihi anō ki a koutou katoa. Tihei mauriora. So what I, just translating briefly into English, is that acknowledging the Creator who has brought us to this time to share this important message amongst the people of the world, and that to steer us in the right path, to reconnect us to the knowledge that has been left in the stories of the ancestors, and that we may find medicine in that knowledge and also medicine in the natural world. And so with that, the blessings of the Creator upon you, one and all. Thank you.
Thank you for attending. Thank you all the panelists. And please spread the word when this is available, which it will be available very soon to share. As you've probably been impacted by this webinar, let's hope that many others will be and hear the recording. And we will follow up with more webinars. So thank you very much and have a great day.